Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am your host, Steven. If you guys would like more panel videos like these to be made, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and remember, I am on Cameo if you'd like a special shout out from me, and it's recording time!
Thank you for getting up early. I'm a little dehydrated. My feet are killing me. It feels so good. Seriously, not only thank you for getting up this morning, but thank you for coming here and representing. Thank you for dressing up. Thank you for the lovely energy I feel out on the floor. You get into the storm of putting something like this on, and you think about the ways in which you want it to go, as we all have been for this. And then, frankly, 2 hours in yesterday, I was just like walking past the floor, and I'm like, oh no, everyone here's I can see everyone's having a good time. We're good. We're good. Like, yeah, it's just that simple. It's like, is everyone coming and feeling like you came to a con? Oh, coming home, yeah, for me too. Oh my gosh, there's so many, like I can't wait to see the compendium of pictures from this weekend already. And I want to show you a compendium of pictures because before we launched Silicon for Real, we had several virtual panels over the last couple of years already. The most recent one we did was we took all of these maker materials from other virtual panels and we put them together into a block. We put everything we had left over into a box. And this, I know many of you participated in this, but this was the humble list of materials that we shipped out. And we were thinking, this is just a great limitation, but we're also just kind of like, let's clear our books and like give this interesting limitation. We'll give this list of materials. Oh no, keep the list up, keep the list up. We'll send this, but we also were like, are we sending too humble a box? Like, is it too shitty? Like, are we hamstringing? Because we don't want to do that. We want to make it exciting. But 44 people signed up for this, and what they did with this ridiculous list, and nobody loves limitations more than I do, but what came out of a box full of this stuff for 44 different people made all of us at Silicon actually almost weepy. And I got genuinely choked up. So I'm going to show you some of the things. And by the way, the first one I'm showing you, Allison here, she won Best in Show last night at the cosplay contest. And that Phoenix was made with that list of materials. So I see that and I'm like, I don't know if I know how to make stuff. But then I thought that with every single one of these executions, everything was so different. Every execution so joyful or creepy. I would like to empty my bank account. This one was repainted. Oh my God! I mean, so many of the animatronic puppets that play violins. People started using the cardboard box and then carefully peeling the packing tape off the cardboard box and reusing pieces of that. This to me. So, yes. So. We have a makerspace out on the floor. Next year we're going to have an even bigger makerspace out on the floor. This, to me, is the soul of everything that we do, right? Because there is no threshold. When someone says, I haven't gotten the costume yet because I want to make it perfect, we know that there's no perfect. Not only is there no perfect, not only is there no perfect, you can do anything with anything. How many of you have been stranded on a summer vacation with nothing but a paperclip to solve a problem, and you did it? Like, this to me is paperclip solving 101. Okay, so that contest is literally the most inspired I got through all of COVID, and I want to thank everyone who participated in that. This is why I feel so much joy around making and around sharing our experiences of making, because there's so much magic in a simple, ridiculous box of some foam and some lights and some batteries. And now, I don't have a prepared talk. I would just love to talk to you guys. So we've got some microphones here at the base of both aisles, and I would love to take some questions and have a conversation with y'all. So go ahead and step up to the mics and, why, good morning.
Hello, my name's John. I just wondering, in the past 18 months of being able to spend a lot more time in your workshop, is there a particular skill you have picked up in the past 18 months?
Oh, yeah. It felt, being able to go into my shop for what was effectively a solid year without seeing another person in there was like, oh, this is what retirement will be like. Which is nice. It's also limited. I miss people. I went into what a machinist would call chasing zeros. I got really into metrology and the measuring and refining and making things at higher and higher tolerances. And I found a lot of meditative succor in that space. I found tremendous amounts of frustration. But at the same time, like the Samaritan pistol that's out there on the floor in my museum, take a look at it. I was not a good enough machinist to build that when I started. And over 130 some odd hours of machining, I increased my skills. I'm not going to say I'm a good machinist, I'm an adequate machinist, but that's a bump up from the beginning of COVID, and that feels really lovely. I upgraded my milling machine in my shop, and I had totally forgotten that my old milling machine has this wonderful little dial on the nave, this little hand ring that gives me finite control, and I forgot that that's not on every mill. So I just bought an aluminum casting, which when I get back home next week, I plan to make fit onto my mill, and the same way the old one did. And I just, like, it'll be the first time I blaze something in about a month, and I'm just really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Adam, how you doing, sir?
I'm very good.
I want you to know, I'm not really here to ask a question. I'm here to tell you how much I love your show, how intelligent it is, which is hard to find these days. And two of the shows that I love the most, I'm a big fan of Jaws. Jaws blew me away when I was 12 years old. And that show you did about the tank exploding up and everything, that was absolutely true, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yes, yes. You mean the scuba tank.
Yeah, the scuba tank, exactly. It would take off like a rocket rather than blow up the shark.
It was before high-speed cameras, but we caught a glimpse in one shot. It really wasn't good enough for broadcast. But what you can tell happened is that tank rattled around in the ceiling of the container for a while. And I still am sad I don't have that high-speed shot.
That's cool. The other show I loved the most was the Green Hornet show. That proved that when you buried a car and you had a bunch of explosives, well, you'd still be buried with the explosives. But that was wonderfully done, and I really enjoyed it. And we need to have more intelligent shows. And there's a lot of myths out there right now, my friend. And we all know what I'm talking about. We got way too many myths out there now, and not enough science. Yeah. But I want to thank you for your efforts and your show. God bless you.
I will say, one of the lovely graces of making Mythbusters was that we got to make a show based on what we were interested in, based on what was fascinating or surprising to us. If you remember one of the, hey, television's going to be 3D soon moments, there was one in like the late aughts, like 2009, and Discovery was like, let's experiment with going all 3D. So they called up the best 3D people in the world, and that's Jim Cameron's people, and they brought in one of his lead 3D producers, and they shadowed us for a day. And Jim Cameron's producer is standing on the sidelines as Jamie and I think we were doing the Pirates of the Caribbean, Can You Walk Underwater Holding a Rowboat Full of Air? No. When you fill a rowboat full of air, it's like 2,500 pounds buoyant. It's terrifying. But we're going through the process of setting up this experiment, and towards the end of the day, Jim Cameron's producer goes over to my producer, Dan Tapster, and says, let me get this straight, because I've been watching all day and I just figured this out. Does the experiment take precedence over the shooting? And Dan was like, yeah. And he was like, I never imagined such a thing was possible. And we were like beaming about that compliment. But that's how we made the show. We got to actually have the experiment take precedence. And frankly, that was because Jamie, Cary Grant, Tori, we fought for that stuff. When the result was interesting, we fought to make it, to talk about it and be right there with it. The camera crew wants to get the reaction, but it's also you gotta make sure the methodology's buttoned down. And that was a wonderful tension, but it was one we got to resolve. Thank you so much for that compliment. Yes, sir.
Hi, Adam. My name's Brandon. Hope you're doing well.
I am doing pretty well.
Excellent. So I've been following your YouTube channel, Tested, and I saw the video from the 1989 Batwing got restored, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, what are your favorite models that you worked on, or do you have any in the future that you plan on working on?
Oh, there's a million I'm planning on working on. And we're all gonna die with a to-do list. With boxes unchecked. If you watch any footage from Tested and you see where my table saw is, behind it is the wood storage, and then above that is all the projects I'd like to get to. So there's 3 proton packs up there, there's 2 Nostromos, there's probably a dozen Blade Runner guns from different resin kits, 3D printed kits. I mean, all the stuff I haven't gotten to. But you mean favorite model I worked on in a film?
Yeah, film or TV show, if that's possible too.
Yeah, I haven't worked on any TV shows in props or models, I don't think. But on episode 2 was my first gig with Industrial Light and Magic. And I had gone through this, obviously I'd wanted to work there since I heard the place existed. And I heard the place existed in 1977. So it's 1998, and I finally managed to get hired by the model shop. And it was because they were in the final throes of episode 1 production. And it was a fat shop, 200 plus model makers working full time in the last 6 months of episode 1 to get it across the line. And all the ships were models. There was tons and tons of miniatures. At one point, Bill George, the effects director, who started as a model maker on Blade Runner, Bill George wanted to build a model, so he built some of Anakin's mom's village as a model, just to step into the model shop and get his hands dirty again. So I showed up into this environment and did 1 commercial for them, and then they handed me on to the episode 1 production. And I was partnered up with a wonderful old-timer named Larry Tan, who'd been around since, I think, Empire. And Larry had been doing all of the initial shaping for Newt and Rune's shuttle that lands on Naboo, that spider legs thing. And he had finished his shaping, and they were like, "How good are you at ship detailing?" And I'm like, "Well, let's go." And so we started detailing the ship, and Doug Chang, the production designer, is coming around. And within a few weeks, I had a great relationship with Doug. Larry had moved on to something else, and Doug was like, "We got to do the interior of this payload bay." And I'm like, "Great, do you have any drawings?" And he's like, "Nah, just do something." And so I always point out this is even the greatest job in the world is mostly drudgery. My job right now, which is a fantasy, is still tons and tons of drudgery, drilling holes, cleaning up my shop, getting stuff out of my own way. And when you do the drudgery really well, every now and then you get to do some really fun shit. And this was Newt and Rune's shuttle, where Doug was like, "Yeah, just do whatever you want." And so I ended up detailing the inside, but then I also ended up detailing the underside of the ship. And if you hold the ship far away, you can actually see that I've kind of drawn a dancing bear, which made it into the Galoob toy prototype of Newt and Rune's shuttle. I am not sure if it's in any of the production. I'm not actually sure if that ship's been has that ship been produced as a toy? Because we worked on a prototype for it for Galoob back in back in 2000. At any rate, I got to detail the outside of the ship. Then I got to detail the inside, then I got to detail the underside, then I got to paint it, because it turned out that they were like, "Well, we got to bring a painter," and I'm like, "I can paint it." And we're like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Now we got to light it." I'm like, "I can light it." And they were like, "Okay." And they're like, "Now we got to take it out onto the set." And so we're out on the Naboo set, which was out on the slab, and this was just this big concrete slab behind ILM where if it was Pirates of the Caribbean, they built sides on it, put water in it, blew up pirate ships. They filmed all the pyro for Pearl Harbor on that slab. All the pod race crashes, they covered it with sand, were filmed on that slab. And Naboo was also there. Actually, the Naboo waterfalls were also filmed on that slab. And the waterfalls were sugar. Okay, they weren't sugar. They were sugar on the first test day, and then the ants showed up. And that's why the waterfalls are salt. Ants don't care about savory, I guess. But that's, so I showed up at ILM recognizing that I wanted to make an impression, and getting to work with a generous, wonderful, I mean, look, sometimes you show up at a shop where there's not a lot of work and people protect their fiefdoms and they can be unwelcoming. This was a shop in which the opposite was happening. Everyone was fat with work, showing everything, and that was the perfect moment. And then the fact that I got to show all of my skills across like the 2 months I worked on this piece was really lovely. And I made friends that I still have in my life during those 2 months. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Hello. I would just like to ask about the transition from Silicon Valley Comic-Con to Silicon. It's always kind of interests me. The show doesn't feel all that different to me. I've been here since the beginning.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. It is a work in progress. I have to often see something in order to really understand what a point of view on it is. I knew I wanted to deepen and widen the maker component of this con because it's something that I resonate so much with. And I think that there are ways in which we've been successful at that and ways in which we haven't, and this is all great fodder and meat for figuring out how to make it what we want to do next year. But yeah, it's a work in progress. All I really wanted to get across the line this year was feeling like a return to home and like it's a springboard to next year. Like this is, COVID has lowered all of our expectations of the things that are possible and also of humanity. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yes.
Hello, I grew up with Mythbusters and the White Rabbit Project, and now I watch Tested. And you talked about the most terrifying Mythbusters prop, which was that weird mangled cat. So, what's your most terrifying Mythbusters experience?
Oh, being wrapped in bubble wrap and dropped 20 feet. That was awful. So the myth is that there's a certain amount of bubble wrap that can protect you from a lethal fall. Confirmed. But let's just walk through this methodology. Okay, wrap the host in bubble wrap. That's not hard. Hang them 20 feet above the ground. That's not hard. Drop them. Also not hard. What's hard is making sure that they don't land on their head. Or their feet. In fact, you want to make sure they land on the padding. You don't want a bias to the drop. So then we got to put Buster in bubble wrap a whole bunch and figure out ways to drop him that are foolproof. And all of that was part, again, of the methodology, and we were happy with how it was going, and we felt confident enough, Jamie and I, and that was the final arbiter. You know, we would compare with each other. You good? I'm good. All right. I think we can do this. All right, great. Let's do this. So, I wrap up in bubble wrap. Now I've got a microphone on me so they can hear me. And I think I had a walkie. But effectively, once I get wrapped in bubble wrap, I am no longer participating. I am a prop. Which I don't like ceding that much control. And moreover, Jamie's in charge of dropping me. Now, I'm not making a joke about that. There is literally no one else in the world, except, maybe like 1 or 2 other people in the world that I would trust with this job. Like, I feel confident that Jamie wouldn't drop me unless he felt confident it was going to go exactly as we had planned. So that's great. And still, having someone else in charge of the thing that was going to drop me was awful. Like, when you are rigging stuff, live rigging when it's hanging, it is a scary business, and it's really easy to do it wrong, and it's really easy for things to get out of control in a hurry. And one of the things as a rigger I've learned is about maintaining control, clear lines of communication, all of this, and I couldn't do any of that from inside this bubble wrap burrito. And yet, the lack of control was absolutely terrifying. Thank you for letting me relive that. Yes, sir.
Hi. So as somebody who's wanting to get into 3D printing, it's kind of daunting and I really don't know where to start. What would be the best suggestion as what to do, or better yet, what to avoid?
You might have to give up avoiding things. Because I hear what you're saying. I feel like what is inside your question is, well, I'd like to invest in a 3D printer, but I'm not sure which one to get, and I'm not sure how to start. Is that fair?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. And the answer is, there's so many 3D printers out now. That what I might do is find someone with your skill set and ask them what they did. Ask someone who's at your level, or maybe just a little bit ahead, and ask them what they did. But the fact is, go buy a really cheap 3D printer. They're so cheap right now. Print something with it. It's going to be terrible and it's going to disappoint you. And then keep doing it, because at a certain point you're going to go, oh, holy crap. You're going to go from like, this is terrible and I hate post-processing and sanding, oh my God, and primer and all of that crap. And it's all going to be there. But at a certain point, you've got to go through the crappy first printer in order to know what your opinion about 3D printers is. So I would just say, you're going to buy 2 3D printers in the next year. And the second one's going to be really great.
Very cool, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to know, do you have any words of wisdom or encouragement for potential makers that are just trying to get their start and make something that they're proud of?
Yeah, the slideshow. I did it at the beginning of this. The fact is, corrugated cardboard is the greatest gateway drug to making there is. I have done everything I've done because I was looking for a certain kind of experience with an object. But I am an object maker. Coding is making, music is making, poetry, sewing, all of, each one of these is a discipline in which the artist has a goal. And that would be the one piece of advice I'd say, is think about something that, if you want to make something, think about something, not necessarily that you can make, but that you want. So it's not about like, what can my skill set do? It's like, what do you want? Because when you start moving towards the thing you want, I mean, I want to ask for a show of hands. How many people have built something, and the first time you built it, whether it was a gauntlet or an amulet or something like that, you were like, I have done it! And then like a year later, you made another one, and you're like, I can't believe I thought that first one was great. Look around. This is the reality. So you gotta just move towards the object you want, because it will pull you once you start to move. And it will pull you, and it'll show you all these great mysteries, and the first one will be like, yes, I have the diadem. And then you'll be like, I can't believe this piece of crap killed me back then. And that will continue for the rest of your life. I am still rebuilding. Once I finish the Samaritan, I realize it's not done, because I want to make one out of steel. And I want to make some real bullets for it, and I want to fire it. Because of course I want to do that. I just have to find a sponsor, but I will. And I didn't know when I was making the aluminum Samaritan, because like I've been to Guillermo's house, I've held the real one. Mine is an exact match, and I thought that would be good enough for me. And as soon as I finished it, I was like, no, it's not good enough. It's not to say it's not good enough, but that I have one more experience I currently want with Hellboy's sidearm. And it would be to machine it out of steel with some gunsmiths. We'll see. I hope that was useful. You're welcome. Yes?
If getting things done is a process of trial and error, what is one moment where everything went hilariously wrong that you still laugh at?
Oh. every day. One of the things that I'm always doing is I am always attempting. I had this whole bit in my book about addressing your work, and welders are like deeply ingrained with this practice. Put the pieces in front of you where your hand can draw the bead and do the welding, and so it is all like, so that you're not doing this kind of weird physical crap. And addressing your work is vital throughout any maker process, throughout any actual like process of achieving something. And for me, I sit there sometimes late in the day with a workbench full of tools that haven't been put away. And I'm like, oh crap, that pen fell out. Okay, I'm just gonna hold these while I reach over here and kick this over here, and I can get closer. Hold on, maybe I can get this here. And I am wasting everyone's time doing this, right? Like, I'm about to drop it, and what I really needed to do was clear away the workbench, take this thing, tape it up, and go get the thing, and put it back in. But I'm like so impatient. I sit there and I make the problem worse, because then I'm trying to hold it and get some glue on, and I drop it, and it shatters into 3 pieces. Actually, my Iron Man helmet, this happened on Thursday with my Iron Man helmet for my Mark 1, is I was just doing the final check on how it fit with the chest piece, and the top hinge broke. And that's when I discovered that the helmet had been poured in like 4 layers of onyx, and none of them had stuck to each other, so when it cracked, it was just like a bag of potato chips. Music to my ears, fellow mud chewers. We have chewed on the same battles. Yeah, and you know, I have to constantly battle my impatience, because I am really fast, but I'm not that fast. But I like to think that I'm really fast, so I put these undue demands on myself, like get it done, get it done, get it done. Yeah. So one of the things I've gotten over COVID is actually like, it's 5 o'clock, I'm just gonna go home. This isn't done, the workbench isn't clean, I'll just do it tomorrow morning. And my life has gotten a lot easier since I've been doing that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Adam. This is kind of random, but I turned 25 years old yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So my question is, it's not easy to say, but what does it feel like to introduce yourself to cosplay without, or multimedia art without the best tools with you?
That's a really wonderful question. There's no such thing as all the right tools. I mean, there are within certain disciplines, within certain practices, you can get into bowl turning, you can get into a specific thing and set yourself up and it all lines up, but for the most part, most of making is imperfect solutions with imperfect sets of tools, because we can't all have everything. I mean, for me, the threshold to entry it's not about the tools, it's about the desire. And regular tools can be so inexpensively procured on Craigslist, at garage sales. Goodwill has an auction site. I'm not kidding, and you can get some great crap over there. And you know, that progression of tools, of imperfect to perfect tools, the young person with the question about 3D printers, it exemplifies my axiom, which is buy the cheapest tool you can get that'll get the job done, and when you hate that tool, that means you know enough to go buy a good one. And that's it. Like, you can't, the world is full of people with joiners in their shop that they've never touched. And I would have been one of them, because I thought about buying one 4 years ago. I now know, like, that was ridiculous. I don't need one yet, because it's not part of my process. But someday it might be. But the way to figure out if something is part of your process is get the cheap version at Harbor Freight. Most of their tools arrive working. They've gotten much better. I love making fun of Chicago Electric, but seriously, they've gotten much better, and it's a perfect entry-level set of tools. And then there's like collaborating with other people, reaching out to people whose work you like, and oftentimes that collaboration leads to wonderful explorations of better ways to do things, new ways to try things. I have this whole group, as you can imagine, of makers like, you know, my friend Simone or Ben Eady, people I am constantly sending pictures of what I'm working on, and they to me. And that process is actually really useful to us. It's probably about a dozen people I do this with, and I'm always learning about new processes and new tools that way.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Adam.
Good luck.
Thank you.
That was not random at all. That was a terrific question.
Hey Adam, one of the most surprising things I ever saw you make was the Duro Dango, the Japanese dirt ball polishing.
Yes.
Want to know if you were surprised by the results? Any plans for a one-day build?
I have, well, so so for those the uninitiated, Duro Dango is a Japanese practice of basically taking mud and effort and over 2 days making a perfectly shiny, very satisfying object that is a perfect sphere, relatively. And Jamie, as soon as I saw a video about it, I thought about this phrase in the film industry, which is, in the film industry, you're almost always working on a movie that's not good. Just on the odds of movies, most of them are not good, so you're going to work on most of those. And when you're working on a movie that's not good, but you're still pouring all your heart and soul into it, we call it polishing a turd. Yeah. And as soon as I heard about the process of Duro Dango, of polishing mud into a shiny ball, I was like, oh, I wonder if we could do that with poop. So we went to the San Francisco Zoo. We collected a dozen kinds of poop. My favorite, warthog poop. Because warthogs are so stressed out, man. They are so stressed out. They're like, you see them, they're like, whoa, they just disappear. I once was at a safari in South Africa, and warthogs were mowing the lawn outside my room, like a family of warthogs, and I'd be at the couch and I'd look over at them and they all scattered just from me turning my head. And their poop exemplifies this, because it's like this little bead, set of beads. Jamie chose to polish lion poop, and nothing smells worse than the poop of carnivore. Oh no, lion poop is so appalling. I chose ostrich poop, it was much more gentle. Anyway, sorry. I get ahead of myself. There is a new wrinkle on Duro Dango, which is the polished aluminum foil ball, where it's hammered, 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 and polished, and polished, and hammered, and polished. And I want to do that someday. So I probably will. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I just wanted to say I just really loved the process of Still Entitled and miss it a lot. But one of the things I missed is the book recommendations. You've recommended some of my favorite books, whether from Seven Eves to Three Body Problem or things like that. So I wanted to ask, what are you reading?
What am I reading? I have just started reading. My wife and I do a lot of reading aloud to each other. It helps us go to sleep and it's really soothing. So I just started reading The Premonition by Michael Lewis, which is about COVID. It also features one of the guests on my podcast, Joe DeRisi, an amazing scientist, and he was intrinsic in the COVID story. Michael Lewis covers it. Lewis is a wonderful writer. His books are really important chronicles of big things that happened. And I've interviewed him on stage. He's a lovely writer. I also read fiction. Earlier this year I read Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad. And absolutely, there's a TV show I'm not into recreational anxiety. So I've been avoiding a lot of television. My wife says the series is absolutely amazing. The book is hard to take and really beautiful. And there's something else. There's a physics book I've been reading, and I can't remember the title, the name of the author. It's like 6 Lessons on Physics. It's a short little book. It's really lovely. It's helped me understand time, or a different way of thinking about time that I hadn't done before. And then I've also been reading about the Wright brothers, because I'm obsessed with those dudes. I want in some format to tell the story of their engineering genius, because I read Walter Isaacson's biography, and I still feel like it's an incomplete story. They're so impressive and weird and amazing. For instance, when these two 25-year-old bicycle mechanics decided they wanted to fly, they were like, okay, this is important that we want to fly. We should write a letter to somebody important and tell them we're doing it. So they wrote a letter to the Smithsonian Institution in 1895, and they're like, hey, we're 2 bicycle mechanics from Akron, and we're going to fly. And we're going to do it this way. And they laid out their plan. And then they spent 5 years following that plan, and then they flew. It's like, And also, I will say, my reading has really fallen off over COVID. I mean, let's be real, right? In addition to all of the different existential crises the world has been facing, I believe that all of us have faced internal and personal existential crises as well. And it has been a grind. And frankly, I have, in that grind, been finding and taking my soothing wherever I find it. For months on end, I found it in the refrigerator at 1 a.m. I lost 10 pounds, I gained 20, I lost 10. Back to where I started. And this thing is so soothing. I wish it wasn't doom scrolling. And I'm trying not to. I try and go on news blackouts. But yeah, it's made it really hard for me to read. But I'm slowly slotting back in because I've been an avid reader my whole life. I thank you that you loved Still Untitled. I miss doing the podcast, but I also just, I felt like I had reached the natural end of me expressing my opinion. And I wasn't sure the world needed more of that right now. So I just decided to shut up. And, you know, it's not to say there won't be another excursion down that road. It's certainly something that I'm interested in. And I'm currently thinking about a kind of an interview type thing that I'm excited about, but who knows? Yeah, I'm just raising my head above the water again. It feels like I'm just getting used to being busy, which is fascinating. I mean, I'm sure we're all just getting used to being busy in many ways. One of the most fascinating things for me is noticing the emotional component of business, like just dealing with stress. On Mythbusters, I was sort of constantly stressed for a decade and a half. So, you know, you don't ever turn the faucet off, you don't know what the water could be like. And so it's been really instructive noticing, you know, getting ready for this is stressful. It's fine, it's just part of doing it. But like noticing where my brain wants to go, hey, can I blame someone for this? Maybe I can get mad about that thing. And like, no, it's just stress, you can let it go. I can't remember what your original question was.
Book recommendations.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, thanks for letting me do therapy on your time.
That's what the podcast was, so.
Yes, it's exactly what the podcast was. Hello.
Hello. So going back to the topic of tools, and you mentioned your love of limitations, have you ever considered, instead of limiting materials for Makerspace or yourself, trying to limit the tools and going for a finished product with a limited set of what you can actually use to get there?
Absolutely, totally, and I love that kind of exercise. I love the refinements that it can bring. As far as a specific personal challenge, I mean, I really think that I have tried that, but I'm trying to think of a specific example. A limitation of tools to achieve a thing. Yeah, you know, so the thing that comes to mind about this is also the different philosophy of different tools. I toured Case Western's 7-story makerspace in Cleveland called Thinkbox, which is just an incredible thing. But when I visited, they were already there for 2 years and they didn't have a table saw. And I was like, how do you not have a table saw? And they were like, this is not a space to build stuff. It's a place to prototype stuff. And those are two different ideas. And I was like, oh, I had never thought about sequestering tools into buckets like that. I like that. Yeah, you know, there are certain times when I'll see if I can do something that I would do on the mill, but only with a table saw, which is scary but fun. The table saw remains the scariest tool in my shop. Yeah, I hear it. Yeah. I just picture every time I'm using a table saw, I'm picturing someone's about to walk through the door with a bucket full of greased marbles and a boat horn. So I secure my body to the earth, and that's what I'm picturing as I'm feeding the piece through. I don't know if I answered your question. Thanks. Hello, sir.
All right. My question to you, Adam, is do you prefer creating things or recreating things?
Ooh, really nifty question.
Or both, actually.
Yeah, no, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. So when I'm recreating something, I'm looking to build an experience that I want. Well, of course I'm doing that when I'm creating something, but look, creating something's easier. Recreating stuff can be really hard because you can get way into the weeds. I remember finishing my R2-D2, which is now like 2005. I was finishing my R2-D2, and I had a casting for R2-D2's skirt that goes here above the middle leg, and somehow it disappeared. And I'm standing there, I'm like, this is the only major part left, and I'm like, I can't, where's that casting? Okay, maybe I can call Fawn, maybe he's got a casting, or maybe Pierre does, but Jesus, this is such a, and then part of me is like, the real R2 is, like, that the skirt is not hard to make. You just make it out of styrene and MDF in like an hour, and then I did. And then it had some rough edges, and I'm sitting there with Bondo making them clean, and then I'm like, what am I doing? R2's a piece of shit. R2 is beat to hell. I've had 2 of the original aluminum ones next to my desk. They've been beat on with hammers, and they have every scrape. So why am I obsessing over the crispness of this corner? And I stopped. Yeah. So recreating stuff can be, especially like museum quality. I had a job once making a museum quality model of like the first potato chip delivery truck for this potato chip company. You laugh, but it was like $1,200 to make this model. That was back in 2001. It was good money, and I barely broke even on that one. Dry transfers, back when we were ordering color correct dry transfers, the dry transfers were in a humid room for too long, and I had to kind of use 4 to get one good logo on the side of the thing. That kind of precision, now I find it really meditative, but only because I know to like approach it really carefully like a dangerous beast. Creating stuff is much easier, and yet it's also it's a totally different creative set, because like you're trying to, when I'm building, I just finished this big build, you'll get to see it in October. It's gonna be like 5 or 6 hours of really great content. And one of the cool things is I was building this thing, and I built things like this before. I know I'm gonna be ambiguous about this. I built things like this before, but everything I'd done before was recreating a thing. This one is like, the thing I was making, there isn't a final version of it yet, so I was making my own. And then I realized as I'm making it, I'm like, there's going to be decisions I have to make that are just based on how it's going, not on anything I can think in advance. And that was really fun, because what I came out with, it's still like, it's 3/4 of the way done, what I came out with is like very different than I expected, but really thrilling. So I love that creative process of the story of the object revealing itself to you while you're doing it. When you're recreating stuff, that often only happens in the final weathering. That's where the piece like comes alive, and you get to see how you can pop out its details.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for that really fun intellectual question. No pressure to come up with one just as good.
I know, right? Our family and little tribe of friends has been following you around at Maker Fair, listening to your Sunday sermons for years now. And one of our friends who was unable to come with us this weekend, Hope, she was ultimately inspired by you, telling how making things doesn't have to be big cosplays or recreations. It can be something as subtle as poetry or lettering or anything like that. And so she does beautiful hand lettering. She's moving from something being cathartic for herself and standing at this terrifying precipice of, do I show myself to others? Do you have any words of inspiration to people who have kept their creations private, yet want to share things with the world?
That's a wonderful question. And I think it's going to be my last question, because we got to make room for Bill Shatner. He's coming soon. Sorry, William. Showing people your work is a totally vulnerable experience, because they can have a huge effect on it without realizing it. It is really important to tell your friends who are making stuff that you like it. Just saying that is massive. I remember a friend of mine when I made my second Blade Runner gun. It's 1994, and I spent months sanding it in my house. And a good friend of mine at the time just said randomly at dinner one night, "I think this thing you're doing is really neat." And I'm still glowing from that acknowledgement. It is also okay to reach out to someone you love and say, "I'm going to show you something, and I would like you to be really gentle with me about it, because I don't know how I feel." That is a really reasonable request to make of someone. And to find someone in your life you trust and say, "I just want to approach this carefully because this is meaningful deeply to me, and you could have damaging effect very quickly. So let's just approach it slowly. And then to recognize that most of the time someone's showing you something, they don't want to know what you think. Seriously, I have been asked officially by people, what do you think of my work, maybe 3 times in my life. Like, seriously, like an artist coming to me, a friend who's an artist saying, I'd like you to look at my paintings and tell me really what you think. And that's a real responsibility, because then I'm really going to take some time and invest in it and talk about it, but only because they have asked. That your opinion isn't, yeah, I need to learn this too. My opinion isn't necessary in the room, necessarily, unless it's been asked for. Yeah, I would say to your friend to think about people she trusts and ask them to be careful. I would also exhort everybody here when someone is showing you something to celebrate the exercise. And if they ask you about the execution, then talk about that with advice and love. But I mean, and this is, I'm preaching to the choir here. This is a great group, but like, we all have to be really careful with each other in these. I remember at one point I made a gift for somebody for a birthday and they rejected it. And they rejected it, and what they said was, you made something, you gave it to me, that's all about you. My mom was just telling me, I was with my mom back east a couple weeks ago. She was telling me when that, I didn't remember this, but when that happened, I was like 21. She remembers me calling her crying because I was so upset at the rejection of this thing that I had made. And like, I didn't realize until that moment how vulnerable we make ourselves when we do that thing. So yeah, that's a lovely question, and it gives me the chance to say, let's be gentle with each other because we've all been through it. Thank you so much for that great question. Silicon, I love you guys. Thank you so much. I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but I just want to say this. Like, I don't care what your political or personal or scientific beliefs are. I assume as a baseline that all of us really want a world that we can live in that supports and keeps our friends, family, loved one, and children happy and healthy, and allows them to self-actualize, and allows our planet to move forward and still support us. That we all want that. And I don't know exactly how we're going to get to that world from here, and it scares the crap out of me every single day. But I know that one of the parts of that solution are us all listening to each other and being gentle with each other and raising the water level of what we give a crap about. Because so much that we think we give a crap about, we really, really don't. So just be kind to each other, and I love you guys. Okay. Now in 10 minutes, the inimitable, the legendary, the American iconographic William Shatner will be here for his panel, so stick around, and I will see you guys later on in the con.